All right. Hello, this is Wmpyr. My job here on YouTube is to help you guys um, in your Filipino martial arts journey. It doesn't even have to be Filipino martial arts, just your martial arts journey. And I've said it before that we live today in the misinformation age. There's a lot of misinformation. So one of the things I just saw on YouTube was this guy teaching knife combat, and he was teaching how to use the knife, and he was saying that if your arm is out, that this is a bad idea against Filipino martial arts people because we defang the snake. We will attack your arms, right? And I've said it to you guys many, many times that in Filipino martial arts, defang the snake is a really, really important principle, but at the same time, it's highly, highly misunderstood. And I watched this person's video, and sure enough, they're trying to make this point, and ultimately, I just saw this person. If they would have done what they had done in the video, you can see that they would have died. That it would have been a exchange with the opponent where he would have gotten the opponent and the opponent would have gotten him, and they would both die. So his point, I was like, you just proved yourself wrong there. And it's not even like they went full contact and tested it. It's not even that, but he was trying to prove the point, and I was just like, I don't see what you're trying to explain here, because it's not happening. um So the idea that you want to have a stance with the knife where your knife is going to be more like to the back, where you are protecting your knife hand from getting attacked, right? That sounds good. Like on paper, it sounds real good. Um, but look, and look, if that's somebody's style, I'm not here to criticize the style. I'm just saying that their argument felt very weak to me. I saw a hole in the video, in their argument. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong, you know? Um, because a style is something that you develop, and once you develop, you're going to know the weaknesses and strengths of your style. And from what I can tell at this point, this person still has at least one major big hole in their argument. And I don't know, maybe 5 years from now, they will fix that hole and they will continue with that style. Uh, where the forward hand, which is what we learn in Filipino martial arts, that should be in the front. And the reason why I have this fencing page in front of you guys is because the original art of Filipino martial art is highly, highly influenced from espada y daga, which is an ancient fencing style, right? And because it doesn't really exist anymore, I have to imagine what it's like. But when I think about it, and I've talked to you guys before, is that style, espada y daga, was for the ancient cities. So it was no longer for the battlefield, but it was for ancient countries. And because the kingdoms and the battlefields started to get united and they formed countries. So less battlefield and now more city life. And now in city life, even back then, they had bandits, highwaymen that they had to worry about, and thieves and stuff. So that's kind of similar to today, because today we don't really war with swords. And I mean, even back then, I that's another thing. I don't think they really did war with swords that much, depending on the region and stuff. But I think most humans it's not as much a sword as we think. I think swords have been glorified, and it's I don't know, we really really like come to like the sword, but I feel like civilization as a whole, we moved away from the battlefield weapons and we got to the sword, and then we fell in love with the sword, because that was the most recent battlefield weapon. um anyway, that's just my idea. I have no proof, no evidence of this, but you have to imagine this stuff, because really this is hundreds of years ago that we're talking about. um so anyway, what I'm thinking here is, because the roots of FMA come from espada y daga, the closest thing we have to that right now is this fencing. And when I look at fencing, their lead hand is in the front, and no, they're not hiding that hand, and they're not trying to parry with a free hand. No, yes, I know there's rules and stuff that probably won't even allow that, but they fight this way for a reason. They've come this way. Yes, I know the sport is, it doesn't make it completely true to Espada y Daga, so we have to take it for a grain of salt. But still, this is very, very good material to study, and therefore the lead hand is in the front, and in your stance, and I've been talking to you guys about this, is the cloud, right? Make the cloud, use this for self-defense. And unlike fencing, we want to disengage. I believe that's the difference between fencing and ancient espada y daga, is that in real life they had to disengage a lot more, because this is fencing. At the end of the day, is a game. It is a sport. It is a simulation. It's not real life. And what they did with espada y daga, I mean, we're talking about real life. And when your life is truly truly on the line, you're not going to be so bold, and you're not going to leave it up to the computer to figure out who killed the other person first. No, you cannot accept that. Cannot accept that kind of fate. So, but anyway, here there's still a lot of good stuff that I think we could study, and it'll help us understand espada y daga better. um, and if you look at their stance, when the arm is extended, that's when they kill. Okay? And so that is the same thing that I want you guys to understand, is when my arm is extended, that's the kill shot. Okay? Or that's the attack, right? And in my situation, like I said, I'm telling you guys to disengage. We don't want to kill the other person. I don't want to go to prison for all my life. Because that is part of survival. I need to survive, not just the violent encounter, but I need to survive in life. So, meaning I don't want to be in prison. If I go to prison, then my survival rate goes down, and that beats the purpose. So, I need to not end up in prison. So, I'm not trying to kill the other person. I am not trying to maim or attack the person. My attacks are illusions. I want them to be afraid. I want them to go, oh, this guy's fighting back. He's not worth my time. Not going to waste my time with this guy. I'm going to go commit an easier crime. And they leave me alone. That's what I want. Okay? So my attacks, if they come in, if they're stupid enough to come in, yeah, they can hurt. But they are illusions, really. They're more mind control. That's what I'm doing. And so when my arm is extended, that is an attack. Okay? But normally, as you guys can see, the weapon is threatening. Look at the bottom row, second to the right. Okay? Where it says highlights from last week's, and then it's from Instagram.com. So look at that one. Look at the person in black in the left and the person in white on the right. Look at both of where their arm is. It's not extended, but it's not completely hidden either. You know, that is the arm position I'm looking for. That is where you're going to be making the cloud. Okay, and this is also easy to understand because if your arm is straightened out, you're gonna get tired. You will get tired, and like we teach in Filipino martial arts, you are presenting the target, which is the arm, closer to the opponent. So that is good to me. What I'm seeing there, that's a good stance. Fencers use it all the time. Hey, if it's good enough for these guys, because these guys are 100 times better than me, then I'm gonna do this. Okay, so that's my logic. If you see any holes, feel free to let me know. But that is what I'm teaching you guys, is that kind of stance. And I feel like, yes, I know modern day Olympic fencing is has deviated a lot from the original ancient, but that really comes down to from the attacking part. But this part right here, where they don't want to get attacked when they first start in the stance, this to me is good. Okay, so I feel like this is still valid. Um, and there are some shots in fencing that, not all of their shots are, they both die. Not all of them. So they do have other skills as well. And um, I really, really feel like if you are going to do FMA, you need to at least, it's really, really worth your time to study fencing. And I have to give you two examples, two extremely important examples to back up what I'm saying right now. Is I have talked to several people that do Filipino martial arts um, that told me one guy wasn't a Filipino martial artist, so I have to come clean on that. The person is actually a silat person, but their stick work is extremely similar. In fact, when I saw it, it looked identical to what I did, and when we cross trained, it was identical. It was a Silat individual, and no, they weren't even from the U.S., so it wasn't like a Silat and FMA from Professor Daniel Osanto or Jeet Kune Do circles. No, this person was from actually from Japan, and their stick work was identical to mine. And anyway, this person told me um, that when they had cross trained with a fencing person, they got destroyed. That the Filipino, the conventional Filipino double stick work and single stick work um, could not compete with the fencing. You know what? I apologize. That was an FMA person that told me that. So I apologize. I'm getting the stories mixed up. What this person told me was that this person also did some Japanese sword fighting. So we're talking like Iaido type stuff. And I think they were fairly, like maybe black belt, if I'm not mistaken, or second degree black belt, and they went up against a Filipino martial arts. No, no, sorry, not Filipino martial arts, against the fencing, and they got destroyed. They got totally destroyed. So that's one part of the story, is that people who do Filipino martial arts and they're all confident and they're like, yeah, I do sticks all the time. Therefore, sticks come from, it's a symbol for the sword, so I know how to sword fight. And then they go up against the fencer. I bet you 9 times out of 10 they get annihilated. Okay, and then um, Bruce Lee, his, I believe, older brother was a fencer, and I think pretty good. I don't know if he was Olympic caliber, but it could have been. But I think he was a pretty darn good fencer. And one day he got tired of Bruce Lee like messing with him, and they decided to, like, all right, let's settle this. And he used his fencing. I don't know if they went barehanded, but he put Bruce Lee in his place enough to where Bruce Lee was like, I have to respect this. And then of course, if you look at Bruce Lee's work, to me, if you look at the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, um, it has amazing philosophy and stuff. But if you look at the technique portion, I believe what he did was he just got martial arts and just put it into the fencing format. That's really what he did, in my opinion. He got, because in Chinese martial arts, kung fu, I mean, there's no rules, that kind of freedom and all kinds of different weapons and all kinds of different stances, kicks, punches, open hands, claws, all that freedom, he just shoved it into the fencing format. And the fencing format is very, very abstract and simple. And he applied it there. He took all that knowledge and just shoved it in there. And what he got out of that was Jeet Kune Do, is something amazing and brilliant in my opinion. And I believe that was because of his older brother. So all these people, they get whipped, they got whooped by fencing. And me personally, the only experience I have was I did something called boffing, which is it was full contact weapons fighting, but the weapons were like fantasy weapons. Like I don't know, it's not fantasy weapons. It was medieval European weapons. And, we got on the battlefield and there were multiple people and you would just duel each other. Now, I did another thing that was LARPing, live action role playing, and that was a completely different animal. I had a guy that was as big as a Viking run up to me and he just shouted out and yelled like, I put this spell on you and this potion and this whatever, and so he just screamed all that. So I was like, huh? And he attacked me, and apparently, that made him win. I was kind of like, oh, okay, but the boffing, I was able to more so test myself, and I was using what little kendo that I had cross trained in rather than Filipino martial arts. I was using kendo because the weapon that I had was two hands. It was a long sword, and because I was like, you know what, this is going to be about reach, so let me use reach to my advantage. And this other guy was smart, and even though he had a axe, so it was a shorter weapon than mine, and I want to say it could have even been a one-handed axe, so it was way shorter than mine. So he should have been at a huge disadvantage, but he was seasoned, and what he did was he took the high ground, so he was on a small hill and he destroyed me. So good on him, but anyway, so that was kind of my experience. At the end of the day, this like basic, just freaking fence, just you have a sword, I have a sword, and then what happens? Well, the basics of fencing to me, that is what comes into play. Okay, so yeah, I highly recommend it. And that's what I'm sticking to. That's what I'm going to teach. That's what I've been teaching, is based off of this stuff. All right. Um, the super, super basics. And obviously, I cannot teach you the advanced stuff because I am not a fencer. I don't know it. I am not at a high level. All I know is FMA, Filipino martial arts, and I even don't feel comfortable saying all I know because it sounds like I know Filipino martial arts. 3 decades in, but I still just feel like I am just learning, 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 student for life, and even though I teach it, yeah, I think that's the proper attitude, not act like you know everything. But um, at this point, it's about holes in the game. So I want you guys to look at this. This is something that is, fencing, Olympic fencing has been done, I don't know for how long, but I don't know how many countless matches occur. Okay, so it's tried and tested like crazy. use this stance, in my opinion. All right. If you are going to change the stance, then you better have, freaking really, really good, amazing experience and amazing reasons to do so. And who knows, you might be the next Mike Tyson, with Customado's peekaboo style boxing. You might have something like that, um, uh, some rare style, but that takes a lot of development. Okay, so at least sticking to this kind of basic. Once again, the bottom row, second from the right, that kind of stance. Um, I highly recommend, and I utilize myself as well. So uh, that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.